So hello, everyone. Good morning from Canada. Good afternoon, most other places watching here, I think. My name is John Degen. I'm chair of the International Authors Forum Steering Committee and executive director of the Writers Union of Canada. So I want to start today by acknowledging that my home on the North Shore of Lake Huron here in Canada is on the traditional land of the Métis Nation and the Anishinaabe. It's Treaty 61 Robinson-Huron land. And I am very grateful to have a home here. So next week at the UN World Intellectual Property Organization, the governments of Sierra Leone and Panama have put forward a proposal for a UN-administered study on public lending right. The study that is proposed would look at both the technical aspects of PLR systems to explore best practices and potential ways of working, as well as looking at the benefits that PLR can bring to authors and to cultural diversity. We at the IAF strongly support the proposal for a study and report. In every country that has it, PLR is a great boon to authors. It supports them at every stage of their careers. And at various events on PLR, we've had the opportunity to hear how in each country it supports authors and can encourage them to keep writing while also being adaptable, well-balanced systems that are supported by the authors, publishers, libraries, and readers. And I can speak to this personally because I'm a published author myself with 3 books circulating in Canada's public library systems. As a result, I receive a very welcome PLR check every year. To me, it's an absolute lifeline to the creative side of my career, which frankly has been on hold for over a decade while I work full-time as an artist's right advocate. So the PLR check reminds me that I am first and foremost a Canadian author, and it reminds me that more books are on their way from my desk. We hope that all other countries attending the WIPO meetings will support the proposal Sierra Leone and Panama are putting forward. And now I'm pleased to welcome you to this discussion about PLR around the world. This is the first in a series of talks stemming from the IAF's recent Creating a Living report, which you can find on the IAF website. Let me remind you that this talk is being streamed live on Facebook as well. And if you intend to tweet about this event, please use the hashtag PLR Matters. Now let me introduce our distinguished panel of representatives from international authors' rights organizations, who today will be discussing the value of PLR systems and a little bit about the situation in their own countries. In no particular order, from Finland, Helmi Kekkonen. Helmi is a writer, a feminist, and a mother from Helsinki, who's written 6 books, including short stories, novels, and 1 autobiographical book about motherhood. She's studied creative writing and literature at the University of Turku, and she is currently teaching creative writing herself. From Malawi, Ndogolera Mwangupili. Ndogolera is a renowned Malawian poet and prose writer. He works as a senior inspector of schools in Malawi. He's a founding member of the Malawi Union of Academic and Nonfiction Authors and is current vice president. From the Netherlands, Arjen Polman, living and working with Sabine in Amsterdam, father of 3, musician, reader, and sportsman. Arjen manages the PLR system in the Netherlands on behalf of the Dutch rights holders and tries to contribute to on an international level as coordinator of PLR International. And from Canada, my colleague and friend, Plr Schneider. Plr Schneider has served for the past 8 years as program manager and executive secretary to Canada's Public Lending Right Commission. And the Canadian PLR program operates under the administrative aegis of the Canada Council for the Arts, which is a federal arm's length agency here in Canada. So why don't we go in the same order that I've just introduced you, and then each of you, please make a statement from your perspective about the importance of the public lending right to you and to your country. And then we'll move on to discussion and potentially questions. There is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen if you've joined us today. And if you have any questions for the panel, please put them in the Q&A and I'll keep my eye on that. So how about we start with you, Helmi?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna introduce myself anymore because you just did. I think the most important thing about PLR is that at the same time, it kind of makes books and literature available for everyone, but I also get paid for my work. And Finland is a very small country, a very rare and small language, and it's really hard to earn a living by selling books. So all the writers I know have other jobs, and we have a really good grant system here as well. But still the PLR has kind of made this, there's some money that comes every year and it's really good. And we also, I think we're a good example for this system that wasn't really good, or we didn't have any system until 2007. And then at first the amount of money that we got was really small, but now it's since 2017, the amount has been really good and it really helps. And at the same time, it's not just the money is always nice, but it's this feeling that even though the books aren't selling millions of copies, we know that our books are still being read. And it's kind of that knowledge that gives us strength to do the work, because no one wants to write books that no one reads. And we have a really good library system here in Finland, so it works in both ways. It's good for the readers and it's good for the writers.
Thank you very much. I think it was very important what you said about the fact that Finland is such a small market and a rare language. So in a way, that makes me think that PLR systems really have a role in preserving language and culture in that kind of a situation. Canada is a very small market as well. Okay, why don't we move on? Ndogolera?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on this topic, particularly from the perspective of my country. As already alluded to, I am Ndogolera Mwangupili, a Malawian poet and a prose writer, and I work as a senior inspector of schools. And I am a founding member of Malawi Union of Academic and Non-Fiction Authors, MWANA, and I'm his current vice president. Maybe a little something about Malawi. Malawi is a least developed country in sub-Saharan Africa, one of the poorest countries anyway. I think that now gives another perspective from my side, which may be a bit different from my fellow panelists. Apart from that, but we basically enjoy overt peace. We have had no war in Malawi, so we are peaceful, yeah, but poor anyway. From that perspective, it means Malawi on public lending rights is a bit interesting. You would not expect local Malawians to buy books because they would prefer to use all the resources they have on the basic needs. Apart from that, also the reading culture is quite low. So basically very few Malawians would read books. So that becomes a challenge to us writers in Malawi. So it means now as writers, we rely on institutions, libraries buying books and schools buying books. So, and then making the books accessible to the public. So there, it means it is quite imperative for us that we get something from libraries and schools. So that's why it becomes quite interesting for us that we can't sell our books to the general public easily. So we rely very much from these libraries who buy maybe few books, but now those few books are the ones that in the end will be available to the people in the institutions. Now, on public lending right, we found that we have nothing practical on the ground. That's quite interesting for us. Nothing practical on the ground. However, it is reflected in our copyright law of 2016, that which is the responsibility of Copyright Society of Malawi to make sure that this is implemented through the Ministry of Justice with the national libraries that are under Ministry of Education. Now, quite interesting is that we have to work with these two ministries. It means Ministry of Justice in one side and the Ministry of Education in the other side that control libraries, and the COSOMA under Ministry of Justice, to make sure that in the end, what is reflected in the copyright law of 2016, it is implemented. So what have we done as writers so far? What we have done so far is that we have had interface meetings with Ministry of Justice as well as Ministry of Education, particularly with the National Library of Malawi. In these meetings, we have really wanted to see that they understand the plight of the Malawian writer in the effort to make sure that we gain something through the books that are made available in the libraries as well as in the schools. So this was quite covered in the local media, our interface meetings with these institutions. Basically, I can say that there is the political will that we have the public rendering right implemented, that we can benefit from it. Our major challenge, however, is its implementation. That is not yet there. On that, we have no breakthrough yet. So possibly it has been a talk show so far, that we have been talking about this, but it hasn't yet, we haven't yet seen the fruit in terms of how we can benefit from it as local writers in our country. So as a matter of fact, in Malawi, few, and very few, as already alluded to, people buy books. So books being found in libraries, we really want to see that the government, these institutions support us, that in the end, we see that public rendering right is something that we can benefit from. And that, as already alluded to, that we have raw buying power of books. So we rely on this. We want this to be really implemented. So we are really calling for the authorities to listen to us and also understand that this is what can benefit local writers. So basically, writers don't see the economic value of their writing because we have low buying power, and then we don't get anything from our books that are found in libraries as well as in the schools that are used for any other purpose, but now we are not really benefiting from that. So it has been a talk that we have been talking and talking. So we are still talking. We haven't yet stopped. We feel like it is something that we have to continue lobbying with the authorities on this one. So Malawi is very much challenged in this area. So we the writers need this support. We are miles away from the implementation of this. We need to learn a lot from other countries that have implemented it and how they're working on it. I think that could also give us a beef up information on how we can really forge ahead in our lobbying and our interface meeting with the authorities. So I think I would say, let me stop there at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much. It sounds to me like there's kind of general agreement on the value of a PLR system, but you just haven't gotten to the point of implementation yet. And just to put that into perspective for you, it took over 40 years of lobbying here in Canada for us to have a PLR system implemented. It seems to take a while, and I hope it's not 40 years for you. Let me say that. Okay, we'll move on to the Netherlands. And Arjen, you want to tell us a little bit about the system there and your feelings about it?
Yeah, sure, John. Thank you, John, for having me. Thank you to the International Authors Forum for inviting me to this webinar. We also had this situation in the Netherlands where we had to lobby for more than 25 years, but Fortunately, now we already have a system since 25 years. And I'm, as you told before, John, I'm the manager of the system right now on behalf of the rights holders. And I'm also a coordinator of PLR International at the moment. One of the coordinators, I have to say, together with Pierre Olivier. One thing I would like to say before I get to more about the Dutch system is, as a coordinator of PLR International, I often meet people who don't really see the need for something like PLR. And they say, like, libraries are helping writers by buying their books and by lending their books and giving them publicity, etc., etc. So what more can they want? And of course it's great, all the work that libraries are doing for writers, but to me the key element in public lending rights is the recognition that some kind of compensation is needed for at least the authors, I think. Nobody ever asks a writer whether he wants to be lent out, or no library ever discussed the terms of lending out. So I think this is the key element, to acknowledge the fact that you're using the works of these great writers. Fortunately, in the Netherlands, we have this system going on for 25 years. And I think in the beginning, libraries also had to really get used to the idea of PLR here in the Netherlands, just like everywhere else in the world. But now we have a good system running. And the peculiar thing about the Dutch system is that there's no government involvement. So the government leaves it all up to the libraries and the rights holders to settle all upcoming matters amongst themselves. So the government is not involved. And this has actually been working quite well until now, because we're always sitting at the same table and discussing whatever comes up. And that's why one of the mottos I've been hearing lately from one of the library directors I talked to here in the Netherlands actually brought me to think about exactly what I was saying right before about the acknowledgement, of these use of works by libraries. That the thing he told me is that the world cannot exist without writers, and that's why he actually turned it the other way around. He said, well, actually you are talking about a lending right, but me as being a director of a library, I'm actually talking about a lending honor, because to me it's more like an honor to pay these authors for the use of all these beautiful works they give me, and this I can contribute to the spiritual heritage of society. So what more can I ask for? So this is maybe something to think about whenever you meet somebody who doesn't understand the use of PLR. So that's what I wanted to contribute for the moment.
Thank you very much, Arjen. So now we'll go back to Canada, and Peter Schneider.
In Canada, as John has provided really eloquent testimony at the beginning, the program is incredibly appreciated by the authors and others who receive the payments. In the Canadian model, we provide compensation once a year in February to approximately 20,000 individuals who are registered with PLR. The program was launched in 1986, with the first payments going out from the Canada Council offices in 1987. The program in Canada is interesting because it's not embedded in the copyright legislation, nor is there a specific piece of legislation or PLR Act to empower the lending right program in Canada. Instead, the program was seeded in 1986 with an initial investment of some $3 million Canadian funds, and was provided to the Canada Council for the Arts, was provided with the instruction to create a home for the Lending Right Commission, which is the board which administers the criteria and the delivery of the program. The PLR Commission is made up of writers primarily, and as well translators, librarians, and publishers from both of the official language communities of Canada, so French and English. The Canadian PLR model is open to works created in all languages, including the Indigenous languages of Canada. The interesting aspect of PLR being in Canada as a Canadian model is that the program surveys libraries from across 10 provinces and 3 territories. It's a large geographic expanse. And there is no legislation in Canada which obliges the libraries to provide information to the PLR program model. In Canada, we do an annual survey of holdings, and payments are based on whether a title is present or not present in a library collection and are tabulated based on the holdings across the country. I think that can illustrate how a program can be flexible and adaptable to different national circumstances and can carry forward over the years under the umbrella of another agency, such as the Canada Council, which is the federal body responsible for arts and culture funding, and which is constructed as what we call a crown corporation with special arm's length arrangements to keep the program delivery of the institution free from direct political influence. So it's a sort of a neutral administrative body. At this point, the lending right program in Canada has received a 50% augmentation to its base budget in the most recent 24 months. And we're now delivering 14.8 million Canadian dollars, which is equivalent to slightly more than 9.5 million euros annually to close to 20,000 individuals. The Canadian model has been able to evolve in recent years to embrace ebooks and audiobooks in addition to the original print book mandate, which was provided to the program in the late 1980s. And I think John raised a very important point about advocacy in that when the first lending right models were launched in Northern Europe, immediately following the Second World War, there was excitement in the Canadian authors community among writers who were active in those days on the Canadian Authors Association. But it was really the founding of the current Writers Union of Canada in 1973 and the Quebec Writers Union in 1977, in tandem with researchers and librarians and other publishing professionals, and a number of research studies commissioned by the Canada Council, which created that momentum in the 1980s for the establishment of the program. It was a long road. It was not easy. And the thing that I think is the most important is that it was necessary to bring the different stakeholders together around the table. And there's always the work of education required to bring the library sector on board. So the authors are so appreciative and understand intrinsically the importance of recognition and compensation, and that the other actors, publishers and publishers and librarians rather, even though they don't directly benefit from the Canadian model in terms of compensation, continue to play an important part by participating on the commission as administrators of the program, as part of the body that protects the program and steers the program into the future. That's essentially a high-level overview of how it works here, and a bit of context about what was required to bring it to fruition over the decades. And I'll leave it there, and thank you.
Great. So we have the rest of the panel time here for discussion, and I have a number of questions. There's at least one question in the Q&A, but I want to encourage our panelists as well, if they have any questions for each other, to just jump in, put up your hand or something, and I will call on you. But the one observation that I wanted to make, and there's a question at the end of it, is that establishment of the PLR system in Canada, to me, is one of the cornerstone cultural supports that has helped in the creation of contemporary Canadian literature, the way I think of it. We have this sort of popular creation story that modern day Canadian literature started in the 60s with the great flowering of public support in Canada. So there was, the Canada Council for the Arts, and a Canada Book Fund aimed at helping develop an incredible independent publishing scene in Canada. And then there was the establishment of copyright licensing in Canada, so that we would be compensated for the use of our work in schools. And I hear you from Malawi, absolutely, that in a very small market, you're so dependent on institutional use of the work. And to me, the establishment of PLR in 1986 was one of those cornerstones that that really, without this support, I don't think Canadian literature would be where it is right now. And where it is right now is in a very, very exciting place, with this incredible flowering of Indigenous literature right now, and a real movement toward diversifying our national literature. I think Canadian literature is really in a wonderful moment. And for me, having a PLR system in place over the last couple of decades, or many decades, has been absolutely essential for that. And I'm just wondering if anybody else has a sense of the same kind of help from PLR in strengthening or creating a national literature. So just feel free to jump in.
Well, something I can add for the Dutch system. One thing we are doing since 20 years now is we have a lot of foreign books in our libraries as well, and the decision we made was not to grant all these PLR funds to the original writers, the foreign writers, but also to grant a big portion of those funds to the translators of those books, which really helped the translators to get to a certain level here in the Netherlands in terms of income, you know, to have a steady income on all the work they are doing in translating these books. So,
Helmi, there we go.
It's really different for us, I think, because the system has only been for a few years, so we don't really know yet how's it going to work out. But for even now, I can feel like this really positive atmosphere among the writers, that we have done something, or actually the Sanasto, the organization, did the work for us. Also, we helped. But this feeling that our job is being evaluated, that everyone knows that it's not like, I don't remember which one of you said that, but everyone wants to read books, and they want to go to the library, and they want to get books for free. And it's somewhere along the line, it has been forgotten that someone has actually written those books, and they have to get their livelihood from somewhere. So this kind of, not just the money, but the fact that we are talking about this has made this kind of positive energy to the scene of literature in Finland, I think.
Yes, I know. I see every year around the time that the PLR checks come out in Canada, this incredible social media discussion that goes on with people actually like taking photos of their check and showing them, and really what's being celebrated as much as the money, which is essential for authors. It's the recognition. It's the fact that they have been recognized by the library systems in their country, by the country itself as an author. I see the same when the UK PLR payments are made. I see the same thing on Twitter. So it really has as much to do with feeding the author's confidence and sense of professional self as it does with putting food on the table, essentially, with the money. we have a bunch of questions now in the Q&A section. So let me just, some of them are a little bit technical, but that's all right. If you can't answer the technical side, we'll just skip you. So here's one. Can you talk about the different approaches to dividing the funds gathered from PLR systems to authors? If I'm not mistaken, some countries create a fund and then distribute larger sums through a small number of creative grants, while other countries pay remuneration according to the lending data. The more books are lended, the more you receive, etc. I think, Peter, you went into that a little bit about Canada, but I wonder if we could hear maybe from Malawi first. What system are you proposing in terms of payments?
All right, thank you for that. Actually, for Malawi, what we are proposing is that the libraries should have a list of books, and they should be recording in terms of the number of the books that are being taken by the public, and with that data, we can use it to distribute directly to the authors. So I think that's the discussion we are thinking, that we can use that data to distribute the funds to the authors using the data we can get in terms of the number of the books that are taken by the public or are used by the public. So basically, I think that's the stand we took in Malawi. So, but we can't say we have technically come up with a very direct system, but that's what we proposed, and the COSOMA is also directing us, saying that's COSOMA is Copyright Society of Malawi, that could be the best way, that the more a certain book is borrowed, the more that book could also, the author of that book would get more from that. So we thought that could be the system that we're thinking of using. But I can't go into the technical, since we haven't yet started implementing anything, But it's something that we can learn from how other countries are doing it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Arjen, can you give us a little detail about what happens in the Netherlands?
Sure, yeah. In the Netherlands, we have a system under copyright, so it's very easy. It's one compensation, one fee per loan, and I'm responsible for making sure that this loan gets exactly to the right persons, the creators of the work that has been lent. So that's a very straightforward system, I guess. But it's not like other systems we see in other countries, which are more like funding by the state to writers in general, and then they can decide upon themselves how they want to spend or distribute the money, which can be like grants or subsidies or even investment in the writing of works. Our system doesn't allow that. In our system, it's every loan has to be paid for, and everybody can come to me and ask for his legitimate piece of the pie, so to say. But there's a great variety of systems and schemes, and that's what really makes PLR great. I think you can just adapt it to the national needs. Just look at the way the book market functions in your country and see in what way public lending right can serve the interests of the writing culture in the best way. So I wouldn't recommend looking at too much possibilities, but just take a look at what's needed inside your own country to keep the writing culture alive.
Thanks, Arjen. So with a loans-based system, do you have a cap on payments?
No, we don't. We used to have that until 1990, but then we abandoned that idea. But actually, we collect the money, and then it's up to the writers themselves and to the other rights holders to discuss how they want to distribute the money. And our writers chose this way you know, to keep it like this, to pay out one compensation per loan, not to use a cap, and also to grant translators, for example, and also to grant visual authors, and also to grant publishers. But this was all the choice of the rights holders.
Great. Okay. Helmi, can you comment on the system in Finland?
It sounds a bit the same as in, like Arjen said, just in Holland. We have the more books get loaned, the more money you get, and every loan must be paid. And we have this, you mean when you say cap, you say that the someone...
You can only get a certain amount no matter how much your book is loaned. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes, we have that. It's, I think it's 30,000 euros is the highest amount, but that's maybe around 10 writers
Yeah.
a year that get that much. The average is about 1 or 2,000 euros per year.
Not bad at all, though.
No.
And Peter, I know from personal experience and from hearing you talk about it that we have a very different system than what's been described here in Canada.
Yeah, you know, each territory, each country designs a program that suits their national reality and their policy objectives. In Canada, when the commission was brought together to design the program, it is equally weighted, French and English, to represent the two official language communities. And it's also, because it's not enshrined in copyright, the commission members have the flexibility to admit certain literary and scholarly genres and not to provide compensation for things such as, in Canada, guidebooks or textbooks or cookbooks. It's not to say that they're not valid, it's just to align the program's work and the commission's work with literature and scholarly works. Given the fact that a work of poetry may only be produced in a small print run of a few hundred copies and doesn't have the reach of a best-selling novel, the commission has maintained a series of minimum and maximum payments so that the most successful authors don't scoop the budget. They don't grab the majority of the funding. I think an international audience would appreciate that if we didn't have a cap, Margaret Atwood would be making out with a significant chunk of our budget. In Canada, the maximum that an author may pull from the fund each year is 4,500 Canadian dollars, so a few thousand euros. And the equity that's built into the model also ensures that writers who are creating in a minority language, who are writing in French, can participate and receive full payment just as the Anglophones can, who are writing in English, which is such a dominant language. And to echo again some of the comments that have been made, even though in Canada, most of the registrations are in French or in English, which are thriving international languages, the cultural expression is local. It is the Canadian culture and the Quebec culture that's being advanced through these works of literature. So it helps to further promote the careers of those authors, to contribute those stories to the cultural identity. And that's an area of common cause where we find we can work with librarians quite successfully, is in terms of the cultural support, of understanding how a PLR program nourishes authors and that the author's works nourish the culture.
Thank you. Sort of going from what you were just saying about books that are allowed in the system and books that aren't counted in the system. Here's a question from the chat from Annika. Do any of your systems support authors of photo books and books by illustrators and or cultural journalists? And so maybe we'll expand on that and ask, you know, how do you deal with illustrators in your national systems, and how do you deal with things like ebooks and audiobooks? Are they included in your national systems? Ndogolera, have you proposed, you know, including ebooks or illustrators in the Malawian system?
No, I think basically in Malawi, we haven't thought that, particularly in ebook, we haven't thought about that.
I guess that's the kind of thing, once the system has been established, then you can have that discussion. I know, you know, our system in Canada has evolved over the years to include different disciplines. Arjen?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I have to say we do. But it's like I said before, it's up to the right holders themselves. They decide upon this amongst themselves. So if we talk about visual authors, for example, then they themselves can decide whether photographers can join in, or cover illustrators or book illustrators. So it's up to them, actually. Yeah.
We have a question directly for Ndogolera, and it's in the Q&A. So let me just read it out. If I understand correctly, you said the legislation is in place and there is political will to support a PLR scheme in Malawi. Could you expand a bit on what is required to actually implement it? Is it an administrative issue? Or is it lack of funding, or just a lack of willingness to fund the PLR scheme from the government? Or are there other obstacles to overcome that need to be addressed?
All right. I could say it is the problem could be multifaceted in a way, in that, yes, we have the copyright law that reflects that we should have public land rights. But the major hiccup is that the libraries are not properly funded. And again, how do we correct this so that we have the funds, and then how do we administer it? So it's complicated. I think the last time we had an interface meeting, it was like the national libraries agree to this, but they look at how can they be, how can the system be funded by the government, so that through the funds that are coming in the national libraries can be drive to the authors of the work. So I think it is more in terms of how can it work. Apart from that, where do we get the funds? Do we have enough funds in what the libraries correct, or do we need the government to fully fund the institutions? So it's a complex situation that we feel like maybe who should really direct us in terms of how can you best implement this. So I think I could say it's from both angles, how to do it, as well as where do we get the funds for this.
Yeah. Okay, and continuing on the theme of funding for PLR systems, we have a question from Paul in the Q&A. He says, in the UK, we've started a campaign during COVID to increase PLR funding to help authors. It's half the amount per head of population as Germany's system, for example. So how prevalent is it in PLR systems around the world that PLR funds are ring-fenced from the rest of the wider budget of distributing bodies? In the UK, as you may know, it's the British Library, for instance. I know in Canada, certainly the PLR budget is maybe administered by the Canada Council for the Arts, but it is separate from the overall budget for the Canada Council. Is that correct, Peter? No, that's not correct.
I can just quickly say that in the beginning, in 1986, there was an initial investment from the federal government given to the Canada Council expressly for PLR of $3 million. In recent years, in recent decades, the PLR is funded directly from the Canada Council for the Arts global budget, from its parliamentary allocation as a public funder. and it is the Canada Council and the senior management of the council which decides and consults with the Commission on the provision of the budget. I need to say that the budget has been incredibly stable and has recently been augmented by 50% by the Canada Council as part of the Council's own strategic plan. And the Lending Right program is the only individual program at the Council among its many programs that was singled out and specifically mentioned in the current strategic 5-year plan for direct investment, with the express intent of increasing the economic well-being of authors. So it's interesting to note that although there is a commission which has a distinct governance role underneath the aegis of the council, at this time, all of the funding for lending rights comes from the overall budget or allocation for the Arts Council and is at the discretion of the Arts Council.
Yeah. And not just because of COVID, but certainly the pandemic has increased the sort of emergency feel around this. The Writers' Union of Canada has been lobbying directly to have that budget increased for the PLR beyond the recent increases, which were of course very, very welcome, and that's work that we'll continue to do as well. Arjen, can you speak about?
Well, let me pose a question to you first.
Sure.
What's the connection between COVID and PLR in your case, or what's the connection you're making? Because I understand that, of course, there's more need for funding on the side of the writers, but what connection do you make between COVID and the PLR in your particular situation?
Right. Well, I mean, there's no direct connection between it other than the fact that as one of these cornerstone cultural supports that we have in Canada, it's more important than ever before because of the sort of steep decline of authors' incomes as a result of the shuttering of bookstores early on and the steep decline in sales and income for authors. So to have a cultural support that is not tied to the marketplace has been incredibly important. Let me just thank everyone for lending us your insights and your experience with PLR systems in your own countries, and give you an opportunity if you have any closing remarks. So let's go around the same way we did before, and we'll just have Ndogolera.
Thank you. I think for us, I would say we are still struggling for this to be implemented, and I've learned a lot here. I've seen the success story from Canada, Netherlands, Finland. I think it's something that we can start from again, and also continue lobbying in our country, that in the end we should have this work. It should not take as long as it took 50 years in your countries, and I think it will work for us also. I think we'll learn more from what is happening in other countries and continue lobbying. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Helmi?
This whole conversation has been really wonderful because it's been really educating for me as well to hear about other countries. And I think it's really good that we are able to talk about art and money like this, because I think that's one of the problems that no one really wants to hear, that also artists need money. So all this conversation in this really kind of good way that things are going forward is really good and makes me happy. And I'm sure that makes everyone, all the writers in Finland, very happy. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. Arjen?
Yes, thank you, John. Just looking at all these questions and other things we've just been talking about is really strengthens my thoughts that actually PLR, it's always about exchanging information. There's just too few people who know what it's about, and that's exactly what we're trying to establish next week, you know, when with this proposal that's going on in the standing committee at WIPO about raising awareness. I think that's those are the key words: raising awareness about PLR, because it's a great system, and it's just too few people who know what it's about, and it's really a shame. So,
Peter, you have a closing remark?
I'm always so impressed and so happy to participate in the international PLR conversations and the network that has been fostered and that is being sustained. And what I think is that we all support one another through our different challenges, and over the decades, PLR systems will come under periods of strain and then periods of breakthrough and advancement and success. And that there's no perfect way to do a PLR program as we're learning. There's no best way or perfect recipe. And that what I think is really beautiful about it is that the compensation helps writers to live and also encourages them to continue their practice, that to keep writing, to keep contributing, that they're seen and valued and recognized. And that as we advance the conversations, it should become clear that just makes society stronger. It makes the world better. And so I'm so obliged to be asked to participate and to provide information about Canada. And I look forward to seeing what happens next, like what comes from these conversations.
Well, thank you all very much for joining us for this conversation today. I learned a lot as well, and it has strengthened my belief that I already had that public lending rights systems are absolutely essential for the encouragement of the profession of being a writer all over the world, in fact. And that's why I believe that the proposal before the Standing Committee at the World Intellectual Property Organization should really be supported by all of the countries who attend that meeting. And I hope there are some delegate members here in the audience who take that to heart. Okay, so we're at the end of this discussion. I want to thank everybody for taking part, all the audience members as well. And as I mentioned off the top, this is just the first in a series of discussions stemming from our report on the IAF website called Creating a Living. So please check that out. All right, goodbye, everyone.